Hello, I'm Frost, and in this episode, we're going to be looking at the free-to-play introduction to the survival game called Occupy Mars The Game, and it is called the Prologue. Welcome back. So as I mentioned in the introduction, what we have here is a survival game, and we get to play this free-to-play introduction to the game, which is going to come out in early access apparently at the end of the year. Now, one of the things I will say straight away is that considering it's not even in early access yet, the game works very well. The mechanics seem very well sorted, and we have definitely the basics of a very, very good game here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to actually go through the various elements you're going to come across in this small campaign, so I can introduce you to them, and then it will hopefully give you a good idea of what the game is about. One of the things I will say is do bear in mind that obviously graphics are something that come later. The graphics are already pretty good, but there's some strange little things like picking up rocks, and, the claw goes through the geometry of the rock, things like that. But those are not really that important at this stage, considering it is so early in the development of the game. But let's move on to the mechanics. So what you do is you start off in this rover, and you have to trundle over in your rover over to your first rock, and you have to learn how to work the crane. Now, the tutorial isn't too great on this, and it doesn't explain very clearly that Shift A and Shift D are needed to extend and retract the length of your claw, which then makes it much easier to pick everything up, and you can use the E key to automate the pickup process. Now, if you're having problems with any of the tutorials, I will say straight away, go check out the Discord. The Discord has got a great community, they're very, very helpful, and if you find yourself getting stuck, pop into Discord, and I'm sure someone there will be more than happy to help you and get you along. So I've linked the Discord in my description below, so please make sure you make good use of that. Now, we've picked up our rock, then we have to go and swing round, and we get introduced to a couple of tools. And these tools, if you play Space Engineers, will be very, very familiar to you. The first one is the grinder, which, funnily enough, grinds down objects so that you can recoup the resources. And then we have the drill, and the drill is used to break down big rocks into small chunks so that you can then swing by with your rover and then pick up those small chunks. Now, we get to use the crane a little bit more, and then the campaign then prompts us to move on to the shredder. So you drive your rover onto the shredder. Be careful not to fall off the edge. I nearly did that myself. And then once you actually arrive, you then discover that there's not enough power being routed to the shredder. And now this is your introduction to the power systems on Occupy Mars. So you have to run down and find the transformer, and then you'll see a whole bunch of cables hanging out of it. And when you look at the instrument panel, you will find that you have not got enough power routing through to the shredder. So you adjust that, and then your shredder will then come to life. So you run back to your shredder, you see your hopper being emptied, seeing all the rocks fall into the shredder. I recommend that you do not fall into the shredder. That would be a very bad move. Whilst that's happening, it also need to mention that there is a little, in the rover, there is a little cupboard by the door above your head, and in there you will find oxygen bottles and water bottles that are going to be very, very useful for your first day or two of survival. So once you've actually got all the rocks chewed up, you can then move over to the production panel, and you're going to be asked to produce a battery, and it's pretty straightforward. You just select the battery, it then works out all the components that are needed for the battery, and then on the 3D printer to your right, it will then start printing all the various items that you're going to need. Once those are all printed, you can then run down and you get introduced to your blueprints and to your welding tool, once again a la Space Engineers, which then allows you to build the battery. From this point on, you've then got to start plugging in cables. And I have to say the cables are great. They're kind of one of my favorite elements of this. You actually get to kind of have cables running around everywhere. And if you've got an OCD thing with cable management, it's going to be a nightmare for you. Although I'm sure some of you will do a great job with the cable layouts. But with me, they actually end up running all over the place. But at least you can run after the cables and trace them and work out where everything is going. So once you've plugged all your cables in the right place, you then need to feed power through to your well. So the well actually performs two tasks. The first one is it produces water, and you can actually get more water bottles from there, so that covers your water situation. And then round the back, there's actually a little standpipe which actually produces oxygen, and you can replenish your suit directly from that pipe. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually look inside the habitat. So you run around and you find the door to the habitat. If the airlock doesn't work for you automatically, then there's some handles on the side. It just means you haven't got enough power going through to it just yet. Once you get inside, you will then see a panel, an instrument panel. And this is very similar to the transformer, but for the habitat. And with it, you can control how much power and how much water goes to the various components. Now, over in the back, you have this thing called the CO2 scrubber. And this is one of the items that is not at all well described in the tutorial, and you will struggle with this. What isn't obvious is that basically you have to try and feed as much CO2 through as you can to produce oxygen. So normally you're aiming for like about 12 liters. But you have to stay under 100 degrees centigrade. And the way that you do this is you have to spin, I can't use technical terms, so I'm not a plumber, but you've got the twisty handles and the turny handles. So the turny handles, there's two of them. There's one on the outside of the case and one inside. Those control the input of the gases, and then the twisty handles control the coolant. And so the idea is you need to turn up the flow with the twisty handles as much as you can, whilst providing enough coolant to keep it at under 100 degrees. Once you've achieved that, you can then start the scrubber, and then over the space of a day or two, because it has a lot of space to fill, it will then eventually populate the habitat with oxygen. It will then also, once your bar down the bottom left-hand corner, which is your O2 bar, reaches into the orange, you will then also be able to create new oxygen bottles. Then we get introduced to the incubator and the hydroponics bay. And I will come back to these in a sec, as these are going to be very problematic for you. What we're going to do is we're going to take a quick look at the first floor. So on the first floor, you have your bed and you have the workbench. Now, if you get things right, you won't need the workbench. The workbench is if you destroy some items. So for example, if you blow up the circuit boards from overheating the CO2 scrubber, you'll have to then fix them on the workbench. You will need the bed just so that you can get some rest. And you'll obviously have to make sure you have enough food and water so that you can sleep through without starving or dehydrating. So you have to kind of work out your sleep schedule. And where this becomes problematic is with the growing of the potatoes, which brings us back to the hydroponics and the incubator. So the way that it works is you have to put these little seeds in to the incubator, and they take, I think, about 12 hours to grow to 50% of their potential growth. Once they've reached 50%, then you can move them into the hydroponics bay, and then they take another further 20 or so hours to grow into full-grown potatoes. Sounds simple enough, but the issue that you're going to have is that you're running off solar panels, and during the night, unless you have enough batteries, you are going to run out of power. If you run out of power, then your plants will wither, they will die, and you have to start all over again. And so this is where the challenge comes in this campaign, is building enough batteries and finding the right time to grow your potatoes so that you can actually survive. And on top of this, you're also up against a time limit because there is a sandstorm incoming, which is then going to cause you a large blackout because there will be no power for quite a long period of time. So you've got a timer there to work against. But I would say that when you do finally manage to grow one of those potatoes, you will get a huge sense of achievement. As one of the things I will say about the Prologue, it's not easy. It does take a number of attempts to be able to get it right. And I would imagine that you will have to use the Discord as well to get a little bit of help along the way. But to me, that is a very good thing. So there you go. So that is an introduction of what you have to do in Occupy Mars, the game, the Prologue. I feel it gives a very, very good introduction to the game. In the actual early access and main game, we'll get access to more things. So we'll have things like health, for example. You'll be able to fix your health. You'll have a tech tree. They're going to bring in vehicles. So a whole bunch of stuff is due for the early access. The main thing that I got from this is that the mechanics work. The game actually works. It's completely playable. It engrossed me for a fair few hours. And I'm happy to know that the graphics and performance will come later. But what we have here is a great addition to the survival games. So there you go. So that wraps it up for me. I hope you found that useful. Please give me a like if you did. If you like sci-fi games, please subscribe to the channel, as I do produce content on a regular basis and also stream regularly as well. Normally I stream on a Wednesday and a Saturday night. I normally release a video on a Friday, sometimes on a Tuesday. Right, that wraps it up for me. Take care. Hit the bell icon. Bye.